So 20 years ago, and I can't believe I'm old enough to say that I remember something happening 20 years ago, but 20 years ago, I was at Skano Elementary School, probably sitting crisscross applesauce on the floor of my then teacher's classroom, Miss Thorne, now Miss Kuftiak. She has instructed me to call her Jessica, which still feels weird to me. So I'm just going to say Miss Thorne for the purposes of this interview, because you will always be Miss Thorne in my heart. At that time, it's crazy because I came along over the next few years academically. I was always kind of ahead of everyone else. I was in the advanced classes and I graduated college in 3 years, but I was a slow learner. It took me a while to read. It took me a while to write. And so it was a combination of Mom and Miss Thorne helping me out. So I credit you, Miss Thorne, for helping me get to where I am today, because I'm not sure if I would be able to read and write without you. So thank you for that. Thank you for joining me. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. I am now 25. I've just moved to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I work in the podcast industry, which is a lot of fun. I was at ESPN for a couple of years, so I lived in Connecticut. I graduated from UAlbany. I was living in Colorado for a couple months this year after I left my job. I'm doing all sorts of things. And I credit you and your husband, who was my fifth grade teacher, Mr. Kuftiak, for a lot of that.
Oh, well, thank you. And I love that you're 25 and I'm talking to you while you're 25, because that hands down was probably my favorite age today.
Why is that?
I just had so much fun when I was 25. It was just great. It was the best summer of my life, and just pre-kids right before I had my first daughter, and it's just fun.
Okay.
If I could go back to any age, 25 would be it.
Okay. So that is the message to everyone listening and watching. Don't let the age of 25 pass you by. Now, unfortunately, the pandemic has taken up a bit of my 25th year, but it's happening for everyone. So no pity for myself. I want to know, do you, and like, I'm not offended if you don't remember, but 20 years ago, I certainly remember hardly anything from then, but we were your first class at Skano. You had been at a couple other schools before then. You were around 27, 28 when you first started teaching our kindergarten class. Do you have any recollections of me at all as a student, or any of the struggles that I had?
I don't remember the struggles so much. I remember you being more like an average. I don't remember you being a high student.
Yeah.
Like, there's a couple of kids in the class that definitely I can still remember standing out to me as higher. And then I can actually remember a couple kids in that class, as lower, because your class stands out to me. You were my first class at Skano.
Yeah.
So you kind of have like a special place in my heart. I remember some of the things I did with you guys. Like, I think we did the grouchy ladybug in the gym.
Yep.
That. I definitely did more with you guys than I probably have with other classes, just because I was so excited that year to even be a teacher. I remember your eyes. I remembered you had blue eyes.
I do have blue eyes, still do.
It's those little things that stood out to me. You were taller, I think, than other kids, but not necessarily the struggles at that time. Like, I think comparatively to other kids in the class, you weren't one that majorly struggled. I don't think you went to the EDK.
No, I was definitely average. I'm dying to know, and I'm sure you remember, but so one of my best friends to this day from that kindergarten class is Shannon McNall. She is a high performer in everything she does. I imagine she was one of your high performers.
Yeah. I remember reading a book in the hallway with her, because that's how we assessed the reading. We would do these independent books with kids, and I remember how high she went, and I was like, wow.
Yep, sounds about
awesome.
Right. Yep.
So that had impressed me. Yeah. So she definitely stood out as one of those higher kids. And now I'm actually on Facebook with her. I see that she's going for her medical degree.
Yep. She is known. I remember having conversations with her when we were in 7th grade. She knew she wanted to be in the medical field. She wanted to be a cardiologist then. She's now since She's doing her residencies and is just trying out a bunch of different things to figure out what she wants to do. But she's the hardest working woman I know. She's now engaged. I'm super proud of her and everything she's up to. So the fact that she was one of your high performers is not surprising. Struggles wise for me, I remember it took me a while to get reading. The alphabet was a struggle for me. I do remember, and I believe the title of the book, and I still have it to this day, Feathers for Lunch was one of the books that we used to read all the time. And so my mom would read it to me every night to the point where I memorized it. And so when I thought I knew how to read was me just reciting this memorized version of Feathers for Lunch to her. It took me a while to learn how to read. And writing wise, I could not understand the concept of a space. I think you guys called it finger spacing, where you just put your finger in between the two words that you want to form. And that's how big the space between the words should be. Took me forever. I remember coming at you with multiple versions of whatever we were writing. Was this space right? Is this too much space? Is this too little space? So it took me a while, but you'd be happy to know to this day that I love writing. I consider it one of my best attributes, one of my favorite things to do. So I have come a long way as well.
Oh God. Oh. Yeah.
So I want to go back in time for you a little bit. So when you were teaching us, 27, 28 years old, your first like full-time teaching job, long-term at Skano. What are your fondest memories from that class, if you can remember?
There was a great group of parents in that class. Your parents were very supportive. I've noticed over the years that parents don't seem to be involved the way that they used to be. And the parents in that class were so involved. There was always volunteers coming in.
Yeah.
Shannon's mom was always coming in to help. She was amazing. I actually remember, I think, the summer after going to her house with my daughter visiting. And, she's such a welcoming woman. You kids were just great. You were funny. You guys made me smile. I loved you guys. You guys were just like my kids. And you spend so much time with the class throughout the year. Not necessarily kindergarten, because kindergarten was half day, but a lot of times a teacher spends more time with kids than parents do, because parents are at work all day. Mm-hmm. So if they're in school for a full day, again, not necessarily a half day, you're spending more time with kids than a parent does throughout the school year sometimes. And then all of a sudden at the end of the year, they're gone and you don't necessarily see them anymore. And you're always wondering, what happens to them? Mm-hmm. Where are they going? What are they doing? And, even 20 years later, I'm seeing what you're doing and it's great, but I don't get to see what happens to everybody.
Yeah.
And those are the things I wonder, but the things that really stand out are the connections that I have and make with kids. And then, at the end of a year, you get sad. Mm-hmm. So I think I cried at the end of the year when I lost you guys, because I had made such a connection with your class. And I was like, oh, now that's I'm like, oh, but I had made such a connection with your class. I mean, and this is so dumb, but I think I even made like little handmade gifts at the end of the year for you guys. And I mean, now I don't have the time to do that now. Like, why did I make gifts? But that's how much I felt for you guys. Is I sat down and did that, and it didn't matter what time I finished that night, but I was going to do that because I just felt so much for you guys. And I think that's what stands out, is just the connection I felt for you guys.
That is awesome to hear. We love you just as much as you loved us. I want to ask you about what you had said at the beginning of that parents are not as involved as they once were. Why do you think that is?
So I don't know if it's, a generational thing. I don't know if it's because schools don't necessarily allow it as much. I don't know if it's because I'm in an older grade level. I don't know if it's because technology has come about. I feel like a lot of parents definitely hand technology to their kids a lot.
Yeah.
If their kids are bothering them, or if their kids have nothing to do, an iPad or their game consoles, they're very content to let their kids go play on those.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very different. I'm very like, get off your game console. Get off. Actually, we don't even really have one. They do have a Switch, but that was a little bit of a disagreement in this house. And they don't really use that much, but they do have like an iPad. But I give them 30 minutes of technology time a day. And then I'm always getting like the more screen time requests. And I'm like, nope, go outside, play. But kids are on their technology for hours. And whether parents aren't showing the interest because they're not doing things with kids, so they're just not showing that interest in coming into school, or, we used to have a field day.
Yep. Loved field day.
Yeah. And when you did the field day, parents were able to come and watch. And in my kids' school, they go to Chango. Parents are able to go and watch. And that's one of my favorite things to do with my kids. Just watch them go and interact with their friends and take pictures. And I love to see that. We aren't able to have the parents come for some reason. So, whether they're turned off by that, I don't know. But it's just, there's not a lot of parent involvement from what I say. And then I don't get to form those relationships with parents. Some I do. It might be one or two every year, but not the way that I used to have those relationships. And I miss that.
Yeah. Do you think, because I can see an argument either way about the role of technology in kids' lives these days. You could say that it is a great thing because the world is becoming more digital and technological. So by giving them access to all of these devices and this knowledge early on, they'll be better suited for the work world when they enter that. You could also say they're spending so much time on it that it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy for a bunch of reasons, because it keeps you inside. So you're not getting all your proper vitamins. You're not learning how to play and interact. Where do you fall on that? Is it detrimental technology or helpful?
It's hard to say. I definitely think it's needed for, your future, your jobs. But I definitely feel like it's impacting kids socially. Kids don't know how to talk to each other. Kids.
Really?
Yeah. One of the things that I do in third grade is they talk a lot to each other. They work with partners, and they really need to learn how to have a conversation. If they're solving a math problem, okay, tell each other what you got for an answer. Okay, how did you get that? Don't just give an answer. Explain your answer. You don't have the same answer? Well, I disagree with you because, or, those types of things. But they really have to be given that language, how to use complete sentences when they talk. And a lot of kids don't do that. They don't look at each other when they're talking. So for the whole school year, I really work on that conversation. Kids don't always write complete sentences when they come into third grade. And I think some of that comes through texting. Some of them write in text language.
Really?
Say, no, we're not texting here. We're actually writing. Like, you can't use text
Wow.
abbreviations. It impacts in that way. But then, I look at some of the things that my daughter's done, like digital marketing covers and stuff like that for high school or college. And it's amazing. And you need that in the workforce. So, I guess I kind of stand right in the middle. They definitely need that for the workforce eventually, but in moderation.
Yeah, that is something I fear. I come from, if you don't remember, my mom and dad are newspaper writers and editors from way back. So writing is kind of in my blood. And so, I grew up having conversations at the dinner table about sentence structure and punctuation. And they're still my go-to guides for grammar whenever I have a question when I'm writing something. And so it's something that's very important to me. But a common complaint from them and from other things that I've read is that writing is kind of a lost art. And not even good writing, just simple writing, complete sentences and subject, predicate, and all that stuff, and not using texting language. So, it is very sad to me that basic writing is kind of becoming a lost skill, especially as you're starting all these kids early on with technology.
Yeah. It's another thing I do at the very beginning of the year. Just something simple. I'll say, "What is your name?" And they'll say, "Jess." No. And I'll go to the next one. "What's your name?" And then eventually one child will say, "My name is Jess." I'll be like, "Yes, that's it." Looking for them to speak in a complete sentence. And then others will catch on. And, I'm just trying to get them to speak in complete sentences. And then if they start speaking in complete sentences, I hope that transfers to their writing.
Interesting. I want to ask you a couple questions here. Feel free to not give the full details, or feel free to not comment at all. But so I've got a couple friends right now who are teachers, who are 24, 25, 26, and are teachers. And so there's been nights where on a Tuesday night, me and this friend might go out, have a good time, maybe get some drinks, or we do something, we stay out late, or a friend sleeps somewhere else that night, other than their own room. And so I know that that's pretty common for just young teachers to do, because that's just what young people do in general. Be honest, were there ever any nights, and I'm sure that hopefully the statute of limitations has passed on this, but when you were teaching us at like 27, 28 years old, were there any days where you weren't totally yourself?
Because I had a child at that point, I was pretty good when I was teaching you.
But at 25?
At 25, may have been a little bit different, for sure. Yeah.
I love that. And then, so this is something that I'm trying to navigate, and then that all young people are trying to navigate, really, is because I feel like it's more difficult nowadays than maybe it was for you at your age. So dating in the workplace and meeting people in the workplace, it's very hard to navigate now, because the line is clearly drawn now, and you do not want to do anything to step over it, let alone come up across it. So you met your husband, my 5th grade teacher, Steve, at Skano. You guys were teaching there. So I want to know, what was the love story there? How did you guys meet, and how did you balance that, hey, we work together thing?
So we didn't talk to each other for probably a good few years. We worked there. The first year I worked there, he wasn't there. So he came in probably the second year I was there. And there was really, this sounds awful, but there was really no need for us to talk to each other. I was in 1st grade. He was in 5th grade. We weren't, a grade level above or below. So we didn't really have meetings with each other. The only meeting we really had with each other was the full faculty meeting. And everybody didn't converse with everybody. It was more like the principal spoke to everybody, and I always sat with people that I knew from the primary hallway, and he was always with 4th or 5th grade teachers.
Mrs. Erlo and Mr. Johnson.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And And if we walked by each other in the hallway, it was just basically like a hi type thing. And that was it. And it's funny because later on he would say, well, I put my angry face on when I walked by you. I'm like, what is that? And he was like, well, I was nervous walking by you, so I put my angry face on. Like, whatever. So probably like maybe 3-4 years in, I had separated from my oldest's father. We were at I think we were at a party together, and we just started talking one night. And then maybe 6 months later, we were at another gathering, and we just slowly started to see each other. We definitely kept it quiet because we didn't know how that would be taken, especially by the principal. And that really happened more so over the summertime. And then when the principal found out, she was like, oh, that's great. Like, okay, that's good. So yeah, it ended up being okay.
So how did you guys conduct yourself in school when you were together?
Completely platonically.
Yeah.
There was no indication that, anyone would really know that we were together. Even now, like, it's funny, if we're in a meeting together, we don't really sit near each other. If we do, it's funny. He'll come and maybe sit.
Put his angry face on.
Exactly. Well, now I put the angry face on. Like, you didn't do whatever. It's funny. He'll sit and he'll leave a seat between us. I'm like, the first time I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I need a buffer seat. I'm like, a buffer seat? We're married. I'm like, what do you need a buffer seat for? So yeah, we're a very odd couple. It's funny. We aren't like loving in public or anything like that.
So you guys have had 2 kids together. You have a third that predates Mr. Kupdiak. How has motherhood changed you?
Well, okay. Actually, we've had 3 together. So I had one, and we lost her at 26 and a half weeks. So
I hear that.
I would say that was a very defining moment in motherhood. I think that really changed me. My oldest, I think with her, I wanted to rush everything. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, I can't wait till she can crawl. I can't wait till she can walk. I can't wait till she goes to school. So I rushed everything. And then we lost our baby. We actually had her in Cape Cod with an emergency thing. And after, that experience, I just wanted another baby. So we had our next one. And when she was born, it was interesting because she looked exactly like the one that we lost. We named her Hope. Because when I was going in for delivery, I looked at my husband and I said, I know what her name is. We need to name her Hope because we need to hope that she's going to be okay. And he was like, yep, that's her name. And we were struggling with her name. We were like on completely opposite ends of what we had wanted to name her up until that point. So when Anna was born, she was identical to her sister. She was just her face. And I was like, she looks exactly like Hope. And we named her after her sister. Hope's name was Hope Ann. Anna's name is Anna Hope. But we just kind of put the spin on the Ann and made her Anna. So with Anna, I wanted everything to just, I didn't want her to walk. I wanted everything, like every moment to just stay still in time. And then the same thing with my son Xander. It's going too fast. I think I love being a mom. I love it. I don't think I loved it enough with my oldest. And whether it was because I was just too young or I didn't appreciate it enough until we lost the baby, I don't know. But I think the loss of the baby changed me as just a person. I just appreciate life more. I appreciate kids more, even kids at school. I look at them differently. And some still drive me crazy. I mean, my own kids still drive me crazy sometimes. But, I was able to now look at every kid, and every kid is someone's baby.
Yeah.
Someone's baby who, they could possibly lose them at some point. And it's just such a devastating thought to me that everybody's child is their world. And if you lose your world, it's devastating. And I think that loss changed me as a person, as a mother, because I know what that feeling's like. So a mother, a parent, but it's a very different loss for a dad. We process that in very different ways. And a parent is just the best advocate for a child. And one of the things I say to parents now as a teacher, and I didn't when you were a student because I didn't get it. But after losing our baby, I got it. That I tell parents, I am an advocate for your kid. And I know that your child is your world. And I don't think I understood that until I lost a part of my world. So I think that's how motherhood has kind of changed me. I think that's what it was a long-winded answer. But I get how a child is a mother's world, because if your world disappears, it breaks you.
Yeah.
And it's repairable, it takes time, but I always want parents to know that I'm there to kind of help with their world. And I don't share with parents that, my world was broken at one point and I get, what a loss I don't share with them that I lost a child, and, I don't go into depth with that. I just want them to know that I'm there to advocate for them and their child. And, if there's ever anything, reach out to me. But I think that helped make me a better teacher, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely.
But I think that's how motherhood has changed me, especially just that loss. It made me a better mother, and it made me appreciate my kids more, for sure.
How often do you look back on that moment and how you felt then?
All the time. It took me years to kind of work through it. I'd say a good 10 years to kind of accept it. And it's crazy. I don't know how you feel about like mediums and psychics and those types of things.
I support it.
But I actually went to see a medium, and he made me feel at peace with it. And it kind of helped me. And the loss is always there, but it helped me deal with that loss better.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I've obviously never been a parent, but I've lost a very close friend before unexpectedly, and I know how that changed me as a person. That that was back in 2012, so a lot of time has passed now, but it showed me that, and I know it's cliche, everything happens for a reason, and it sucks that that life teaches you these lessons in this cruel of a way, but it has truly taught me that every day is precious. Anyone can be taken from you at any moment. So, I always try to be the bigger person in situations. I never try to leave a room angry or leave a text thread angry because, it's kind of morbid, but I'm always conscious of the fact that this could be the last time I interact with this person. And if that person is to leave my life, all of a sudden, my lasting memory is going to be this angry emoji that I sent at this person or whatever it is. So it's taught me something, and I'm glad that it's taught you something as well. And I can only imagine how much more amplified it is being a parent. Not to stay on a sad subject here, but the inspiration for why I wanted to talk to you this week is, of course, 20 years ago, you were tested very early on in your career for a moment that it's one of those moments of a handful or a dozen moments in your life that we'll all have where you just remember so much more about it. You remember where you were. You remember, you just remember all these certain details about a day. So that's, of course, September 11th, 2001. I'm in kindergarten at that time in your class. I would like to kind of deconstruct the day as best as we can. I know it's 20 years ago, so the memory is a little fuzzy, but you probably just remember more than I do. So I'd like to tell you my version of that day and how it went down, and then we can exchange notes, and I want to hear your story as well. So any other day, right? Just any other day. I mean, we're maybe a week into school at this point, had not been long. So it's one of my first few days of school. It was only half day kindergarten, so get on the bus at 8 a.m. or whatever and leave school around noon. I took the bus to school, took the bus back, go to school that day. We're doing whatever it is that we're normally doing in the morning. And then our principal, Miss Fitzgerald, I remember hearing her on the loudspeaker. I don't remember what she said, but her voice was a little scared or uncertainty, didn't know what was going on, but she basically said something has happened. Something big has happened. We're sending all the students home a little early. The buses are coming. Got to wait a little bit until we can get the buses here, then get on the buses, and everyone kind of escorted us there, just made sure that we were good, and then took the bus home. Didn't quite understand why I was leaving school earlier. And then I get home. I imagine my mom hugged me very closely. My dad was off at work, and then we turned on the news. I mean, every channel that you can imagine was on, covering what was going on. The breaking news banners, of course, the smoke emanating from the towers, chaos, people covered in ashes and soot, and people on the streets, and then iconic images of NYPD and of all the first responders and all of that stuff, and all the different images from around the country where other planes were being hijacked, like in DC or in Pennsylvania, I think. So an absolutely crazy day. And I remember the fallout a little bit. I was a diehard Yankees fan. So the Yankees were in the World Series that year. And I remember President Bush at the time throwing out the first pitch at the Yankees Diamondbacks was the World Series, and he threw a perfect strike right down the middle, which was kind of symbolic of American resilience in that time. And so, just looking back, like of all the things that have happened in my life, there's nothing more that when I think about it that gets me more emotional or gets me more fired up. Still, 20 years to this day, just thinking about how another country could take out their own agenda, their own vendettas on us, on just innocent people going about their days, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, sons and daughters. Just something so violent and cruel just happening that day. And so many people went to work that day and went into the city that day for the final time. And it's just something that just breaks me up every time I think about it. The images will never leave my mind of the burning the burning towers of the planes flying into the towers and then immediately just going up in flames. It's wild. So that's kind of just my memories of it. I'd love to hear from your side what you remember of that day, teaching us that day.
So that was actually the second day of kindergarten.
Okay.
The first week, like those first 3 days, if I remember correctly, we just did like small groups of you guys coming in. You would come in with your parents, I think, or like the first half hour, maybe you would come in alone. There would be like a group of 4 of you or something, acclimate to the room. And then your parents would come in for the second half hour and you guys would still be in the room. And I would just kind of talk to them a little bit about what we're going to do or whatever for the first part of the year. Maybe it was the third day because we might have just done that Wednesday and Thursday. So maybe that was the third day at kindergarten. Friday was probably your first whole day. And then 9/11 was on a Tuesday. So I remember, if you remember Mrs. Rice.
Yep.
She came into the classroom, it was like 9 something. And she said, plane just hit the World Trade Center. I was like, what are you talking about? So I remember walking into Diane McGovern's room and she had, those rolling TV carts.
Yeah.
So she had that plugged in and she was watching the news because I honestly can't remember if we had our own computer in the classroom at that point.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Because I feel like if we did, I would have had it pulled up. So I don't know if we did or not. So she had the picture of the towers and I remember the smoke coming from the tower and she had it pulled up because her son worked down in the city. So she was just really nervous about, if her son was okay or not. And that's kind of the extent of what I remember in school. So then I remember being at home with my daughter. She was a little over a year at that point, and I just had the news on watching it. And I was like, all right, I need to get out of the house. So I took her to Friendly's. And
such a Clifton Park thing to do.
I know. I don't even go to Friendly's now. So we went there. When we got home, I remember a friend of mine called me, close friend that I've known since kindergarten, oddly enough. And her ex-boyfriend, who, we were all really close, worked in the towers. So we weren't sure what was going on. So his family hadn't heard from him. So within the next couple of days, like that's kind of where my head was going. Like, after I found that out, is he okay? And that's kind of where over the next few days, my head was just kind of focused on my friend. Like, is he going to be okay? Did he get out? So he ended up not getting out. He had moved downstate, gotten a job with his brother-in-law's company. So him and his brother-in-law were both on one of the top floors and ended up being in the towers when they came down. So I remember at Skano, and I don't know if they had it in the morning or in the afternoon, there was an assembly. And maybe you would remember if you were at it, it probably would have been in the morning. And if you weren't there, it would have been in the afternoon. And that was probably on that Friday. So the towers came down on Tuesday. Skano had an assembly on Friday. And I know that they did that song, the signing song. You know the one I'm talking about?
I feel like we signed every song. I'm sure if you were to tell me what.
God Bless the USA.
Oh yeah, great song.
And as soon as that started, I actually had to walk out of the room. I couldn't handle it. So I ended up going, it must have been the afternoon because I wouldn't have left a classroom full of kids, or I might have said something to somebody. And I just walked back to my classroom and just lost it because I lost a friend. So I couldn't handle being in a room full of kids and keeping it together. And so that was really what I remember, just losing my friend in the assembly in Skano, and just kind of being glued to the news for a few days.
How difficult was it to keep it together for those couple of days, knowing the uncertainty around your friends and this attack that had just happened on the country? Meanwhile, you need to put on a brave face and try to tell the kids that everything is okay, because obviously we don't understand the gravity of what's going on.
It's definitely kind of hard. I mean, I think the good thing was that you guys were so young. Is that something like saying, oh, it's just bad people did a bad thing, and that was appeasing to you guys? I think the older kids, you need more than that. Mm-hmm. They need more of an explanation. Young kids, it's so easy to just distract from the topic that when I could say something like, oh, it's just bad people did a bad thing, and all right, let's read a story now. And,
yeah. Let's talk about the hungry caterpillar.
Exactly. You don't have kids asking a lot of questions and keeping on that topic. And whereas if it was something like 4th or 5th grade, you have kids wanting more information and, well, what about this? And why'd they do this? And so I was glad that I was in kindergarten at that point and not in 4th or 5th grade.
Yeah.
Or higher.
There's obviously been a lot of changes since September 11, 2001 in a bunch of different areas of life. I think most visibly is the travel industry, the airline industry. Obviously, I remember a time when my dad would leave on a work trip, I could walk right up to the gate with him and say bye-bye as his plane was taking off. So obviously that industry has changed. A bunch of other ones have changed. Has the education industry changed at all? Has there been something that has happened because of 9/11 that you can think of?
I mean, I don't know that it's because of 9/11, but now, when you walk into Skano, we have doors like a vestibule.
Yeah.
2 sets of doors. There's a buzzer to let people in. We have ID tags we have a code that you have to put in and an ID tag that you have to scan. So it's just much more secure than it used to be. Maybe it was a long range plan, but I don't know that that's just because of 9/11. We definitely have a lot more drills in place. I don't remember doing like a lockdown drill.
No.
When you were young. But I think that also comes from, shooters being in schools.
Yeah.
And that type of stuff too.
Yeah. Wow. That was certainly a crazy time. This isn't a political show. Like, I never get into politics. I'm not very political or have any thoughts on it, but I'm just kind of big picture. Obviously things have happened in Afghanistan over the past few weeks. We've left. American, soldiers have died over there in trying to evacuate Americans and Afghan citizens out of the country, which is now fallen to the Taliban once again. So, to the surface, it seems like, okay, well, we just fought 20 years for nothing. The Taliban is still there, and they're taking away all of the rights and freedoms and the democracy that we were there trying to establish for the last 20 years. So just how does it make you feel? What kind of emotions come to mind when you just think about what happened in September of 2001 and where we are now?
I mean, it's horrible to say, but I don't really think a lot about that. I mean, what I see, and I don't watch the news a lot, which is awful to say, but
No, that's fine. I don't either.
I don't expose my kids to it. I mean, I keep them clueless in the world, which is horrible to say, but I try not to expose them to what's going on. I don't want them to see this horrible stuff in the world. But then in turn, that kind of keeps me clueless, I guess, sometimes. The most I've seen going on is people are trying to get back here to the United States. And it makes me sad. Like, I guess that's it. It just makes me sad, the things that are happening. It breaks my heart that people just, for lack of a better word, just this cruel and mean. And it's such a kindergarten word really to use, but I don't know how people can be like this. You wonder why. Why are people this way?
Yeah.
I'm in my house or in my classroom, in my tiny little world. The thing that I preach most, I think, is kindness. I have this huge poster, I don't know, sign or whatever you want to call it, in a frame that says, "In a world where you can be anything, be kind," in the middle of my family room. And I point that out to my kids all the time. And I say it in my classroom all the time. And then there's things like this going on in the world. And it's the complete opposite of what I'm teaching. And it's heartbreaking that this is happening to people, these deaths. And it's awful to say, but I shut it out, and I don't even want to be exposed to it.
That's interesting. And I fully understand why. I remember my fourth grade teacher, I don't think he's at Skano anymore, but Mr. Brown was the man.
He was just at my house the other night.
Oh, wow. Tell him I say hi. Shout out to Gary. He made us do, and this was the first time I was really exposed to world events. He just made us do this segment or something every day called current events, where maybe over the weekend we would have to just keep track of maybe 3 stories and write something about what was going on. It could be in any walk of life, big or small, national, local, serious, not serious, whatever. But that was the first time I really remember kind of thinking about something beyond my world. And so I have an interesting relationship with current events now. I think it's just because, like, obviously the news is overwhelmingly negative, and it's overwhelmingly negative because that's what draws ratings and such. I'm in the media industry. I'm fully aware of this, that bad headlines and gunshots and fires and death and scandal all draw more than saving a dog, than a donation, things of that nature. So I fully get it. And so I'm skeptical of the news industry. So I don't consume that much, only when it's really big stuff. January 6th this year, Afghanistan, big historic events. So it's interesting, and I understand your reasoning for not exposing your kids to it, but I do wonder, could it be a detriment to them to kind of make them, by not exposing them to the cruelties of the world and the horrors of the world, that they might grow up one day and have rosy colored glasses and think that everything is perfect when it's not?
I mean, I definitely think that they're exposed, in school. Like you said, Gary Brown had it in 4th grade. And so I definitely think we'll get exposure. I definitely think there's family conversations that happen in front of them when we have extended family. They hear a lot.
Yeah.
We have a couple NYPD officers in our family, and they overhear conversations that, things that they deal with in the city. So we don't shelter them from conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
We don't say, quiet, the kids are here.
Yeah.
So they definitely hear conversations that happen within the family or the households.
Yeah.
But we just don't.
By osmosis, you just, as you're going through life, you might not seek it out. It just finds you. And so that's kind of their learning.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. I love your mantra about kindness. That is something that I hammer home to myself every day. I'm not sure if you remember, but I remember. So you had, and I don't know if you still do it, but you had a system in your classrooms, the bear system. And there was like the blue bear, the red bear, maybe a green bear. I don't know, but the red bear was.
Apologize for that right now.
Oh,
I know
please. Why? The red bear was bad. There were definitely kids that I remember who got their bear flipped to red so often. But when I got mine flipped to red, which was maybe a handful of times in the year, like looking back, I think, only 5 times getting flipped to red bear. That's not that bad. But when I got flipped to red bear, I was absolutely terrified to go home that day because I think there would be a call home and mom would find out. I was terrified of my mom at that time getting flipped to red bear. So I would just go home and get screamed at for whatever I did. I don't even know what I did to deserve a red bear, but I don't miss those days. But it seems that you regret that system.
I do. I don't like that system anymore. I just kind of we have a conversation. If there's something extreme, I might have a kid write a letter home. I'm like, all right, listen, this is going to come from you. It's not going to come from me. And then the parent has to just sign the letter and bring it back. And yeah, because otherwise, you remember the kids that had the red bear all the time. And I feel so bad. I'm like, oh, yeah. That was like a first couple year teacher thing. And
yeah,
I don't like that. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good. I've gotten over it. I forgive you. A common criticism of kids these days is that they're softer. They don't know how to, everyone gets a trophy or whatever. They're softer. They handle discipline not so well. Do you find that to be the case now that you've been a parent for a long time and a teacher for a long time? Do you have to parent teach differently discipline wise than maybe you once had to?
I definitely agree with that. It is hard to discipline kids that might need it. For example, just homework situation. I don't believe in a lot of homework. I definitely think that kids should have homework just for the routine of it. Because, in middle school and high school, there's going to be homework. They are going to get hammered with it. It has to get done. In college, you are responsible for doing work outside of your classes. So I give math and I ask kids to read 20 minutes a night. And there are kids that will never do homework ever. But we really can't give consequences. We can't say, okay, you need to stay in for recess and do your homework because you didn't do it last night. So they don't learn that it has to be done. Do you know what I mean? That's just one example. Because parents will get upset if you discipline their child. And another example would be, I had a little girl, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and this would be in 3rd grade, and she would bring her toys into the classroom, and they were a little distracting. You're in 3rd grade, you can't bring your toys into the classroom. So I gave her a couple warnings. If you bring your toys into the classroom, and I don't yell. I'm a very soft speaker, calm, and it works for me. So if you bring your toys in again, I'm going to take them and I'm going to keep until Friday afternoon, and you can take them home on Friday. So she had the warning. She brought them in again. I said, okay, you need to give them to me and you can take them home on Friday. So her mother called that afternoon and screamed at me. So I said, okay, listen, you yelling at me is not doing us any good. I said, I'll give her toys back tomorrow, but she can't bring them in. Because the mother was just so upset with me that I took her toys away. And I was like, she had a warning. I'm like, I gave her a warning. But it was just the parenting that you can't say no. You can't take something from my child. You can't say no to my child. And they're never going to learn that everything doesn't go their way.
Yeah.
And I say no to my kids. Like they hear the word no, they understand the word no, and they're going to hear it in life. But some parents just won't say no, and they will get that trophy when they play baseball every year.
Yeah.
And, so I definitely think, it is harmful to kids. Like when they go to interview for a job, when they don't get that first job that they interview for, they're not going to understand why. Like, why did you not get that job? So
you've always gotten everything. Everything has always gone your way. You've never been told no. You've never felt rejection before. That can be awakening if you've never had it before.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Miss Thorne, thank you so much for joining me today, for imparting your wisdom on us. You're the first teacher of mine that I've had on the show. I might have to get Gary or your husband Steve on here at some point soon. Thank you for sharing your stories and your memories as best as you can, and thank you for leaving a big impact on my life. You might not think about it as often as I do, but I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for joining me. Best of luck with everything going forward.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for saying that I left an impact 20 years later, because that really means a lot. It does.
Thank you for watching today's episode of The Troy Farkas Show. If you would like more from me and my guests, head on over to thetroyfarkasshow.com for more podcasts, blogs, and videos. Be sure to drop a like on YouTube. You can subscribe to my channel. You can follow the show wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We would really appreciate it.